We built our brand essentially on this professional sports training for the private sector. That's the nuts and bolts of what we did. And the tech was kind of pivotal for that. So we have a really long tail goodwill benefit and brand reputation as a result of that type of tech implementation.
Welcome to VALDCAST. We're back. Vault HQ, Karl Goodman.
4 years running.
Welcome.
Thanks, mate.
Welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
100%. Our bit of a different setting, bit of a different backdrop than we're usually used to. We're at Vault HQ. It's the week of VALDCon 2025, which is surreal on many levels. We'll jump into all the different things going on in a bit. But how have you been, Karl?
Good. It's great to be here. It's my 4th year straight at VALDCon. Pretty amazing to see that every single year you guys find some way to add about 50 more staff that I have to now remember names of.
Yeah.
I remember 4 years ago presenting to you guys when we could all fit in one room, and now we can't fit in one warehouse.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive and a testament to what Laurie, Sam, and the team are doing. And I'm, as I said, excited to be here.
For sure. Yeah. For the Valdies listening, that room we talked about was the Alta back room. So it wasn't even the main gym. And we filled that up with virtually all of our commercial team. Yeah. And that was a tight squeeze. But now you can see behind us, you can see the backdrop. We've got 2 to 3-fold that number.
Yeah, there would be no chance that the team would fill into that room now. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. I don't think many companies could say they've tripled staff in 3 or 4 years. So
for sure. We're moving in the right direction, for sure. Indeed. But yeah, the topic of today's conversation, we'll keep it quite loose. Athletes Authority, everyone knows who Athletes Authority is. It's, I would dare say, a global brand now. It's not just one hemisphere versus the other. You're everywhere. We all know you. We all know Athletes Authority. But I want to just jump into the role of Vault in Athletes Authority. If we take it from the start all the way to where you're at now. So where did it fit in? Where did it start?
Well, we first became customers in 2018. And the context behind making that decision is myself, my business partner, Lockie, we're exercise scientists, so we understand and understood the value of data. But we were really approaching data with a very dirty science. To give you some context, in the absence of ForceDecks, which are almost a household name now, we had an industrial calibrated weight scale that, we bought for a couple of grand, I think, from a warehouse logistics company that accurately measured to a 0.1 of a kilo weight. Mm-hmm. So we would do kind of quasi-isometric thigh pulls on a calibrated weight scale. And that was kind of our version of science. And then there was the opportunity, of course, when you guys had the Nordboard, and we were already using the Nordboard one, and probably the first film in private sector. Mm-hmm. To kind of realize that Lockie was a bit of a hamstring guy anyway, so it kind of made sense. And then you guys acquired ForceDecks. And really, in those early days, Vold provided a lot of legitimacy for us. As an exercise scientist prior to tech, you're really not any different to a personal trainer in terms of your actual functions, what you deliver, what you do. You still deliver exercise programs, you still deliver training, you still deliver coaching. Not really any distinction between what a personal trainer will do, and as a company trying to really attract competitive and aspiring athletes, we needed some real form of differentiation. And back in 2017, 2018, tech gave us that chance to do that. And any other version of tech was absolutely unapproachable. There are a couple of other force play companies, but I had to have $40,000. And I'd already spent my $40,000 on squat racks and barbells and plates, and I didn't have that. And so, the ForceDecks came around, and soon after the ForceDecks came around, the groin bar, which is now the Force Frame, came around. Everything started to build. And now we have a suite of technologies that are so vital to our business. I was saying to you before we started, I don't know what we'd do if we didn't have technology in our business.
Yeah, 100%. When we talk about like the athletes themselves coming in, it's obviously great to have this leading technology. It makes you feel like an elite athlete. And even the people that maybe not are at that level, they're not at that professional level, they get treated like a professional. But how is that factored into the delivery of, the service at Athletes Authority?
Well, our business model really approaches tech to capture 3 buckets. The first category is we want to deliver better athlete outcomes. We want them to be stronger, we want them to be fast, we want them to be more explosive, we want them to be more athletic. So that's kind of the first category. And the way that we think the tech does that is the tech starts with giving us better insights, things that maybe the eye could intuit, but couldn't exactly objectify. So we can tell the difference between a great counter movement jump and a not so great counter movement jump. And we can all observe that. Anyone with reasonable coaching knowledge can do that. But to then extract the millimeters of flight time or the extra seconds of flight time, all those types of things we need to objectify. So the insights allow us to create or manufacture better decisions lead to better outcomes. So that's kind of the first kind of category. The second reason why the tech is so important for us is once we have better outcomes for athletes, we can also provide better, more meaningful coaching experiences for our team. If they want to work with a professional athlete, they're probably going to need that type of exposure to high quality tech. They're going to have to get used to force decks, Nord boards, GPS, all those types of higher end techs that you would see in professional environments. So it kind of creates a pathway for them to do that and gives them more meaning in their experience in their role as well. And then quite selfishly, the third experience or the third category is really that we need to drive more revenues. Every business relies on ultimately generating more revenues, and Vault allows us to do that. In the very early days, it provided this really unique differentiation for us. And we saw this massive uplift. We built our brand essentially on this professional sports training for the private sector. That's kind of where that's the nuts and bolts of what we did. And the tech was kind of pivotal for that. So we have a really long tail goodwill benefit and brand reputation as a result of that type of tech implementation.
Okay. So this is the question that I always get asked by businesses that just bring on force decks, for example. It's how do we actually make money from it? Because there's a cost associated to it. That's fine. There's two different trains of thought in the industry that I'm aware of, at least. And it's number one, I get this tech and I use it as like a one-time testing package. I charge a set fee for it, and hopefully I get 10 or I get 20 people a month, and it makes me some revenue. I can pay the bills first of all, and then I get some profit. The other one is integrating it into your offering, so your service offering, if it's a subscription model or whatever it is. But touch on that from the AA point of view. Yeah.
Well, I think a business owner should approach this from maybe three different perspectives. The first one, and before we kind of go into it, is if you're going into this thinking that it's a cost or there's a price associated with the tech, I think you're probably selling yourself short. If you actually come into this thinking it's an investment, your motives and your initiatives go, well, how do I extract return on the investment? In the same way you purchase a house, you're not primarily thinking, if you're purchasing an investment property, what's the price? You think about what's my capital upside, what's the asset appreciation over time, what revenues can I generate from leasing this out? You're thinking about those types of opportunities that exist rather than just the price. So I'd first say you need to think about that first. Don't go into this with a frame that it's a cost. Go in this with the frame of there's an opportunity to create a great return. How do I do that? What's going to be the mechanism? So maybe let's go into that.
Okay.
I think, and somewhat depends how you'd approach this depending on where you're at in your business situation. So maybe the first business situation would be you're resource heavy. You've got a lot of staff. You've got a lot of availability. And you're looking to try and fill their diaries up, for example.
Yeah.
So you might feel like you're over-resourced on staff, under-resourced in cash because you're just not getting a good return on that. One of the easiest things that you can do with technology now is to try and find avenues to attract new clients that you otherwise wouldn't get for your front-end offers. So, for example, if you've got a physio who works with a local soccer team, and we've done this, so I'll kind of walk you through what we've done. We would approach the local soccer team and say, hey, look, we've got this suite of technologies. Have you ever done any kind of milestone-based testing over the course of a season to better understand and predict or better navigate the training process? Do you do it when they come back from their season? Do you do it when they finish preseason? Do you test through kind of key milestones throughout their season? And if the answer is no, and you would like better insights on kind of what your training process is doing and how you periodize in training, would you be interested in doing some group testing? So we can bring the suites to you. We'll turn up to the club at 5 p.m. or whatever it is in the evening and test 150 athletes. Now that's assuming you've got a couple of staff and a couple of people that can do that. But you can generate $4, $5, $6 off the back of that. Use VaultHub to produce some great reports and then provide some insights to individuals who go, hey, look, we notice you're in the bottom 20% of your cohort for jump data, or your hop data is probably underperforming. Do you want to explore how we might be able to help you there? So you can use it as an acquisition channel.
Yeah.
If you find you've got a lot of resources with staff, but they're underutilized, so it might be the first way you could do that. You can then apply that same concept to medical practices, to retirement homes. There's a whole bunch of different procuring profiles you can apply that same concept to. You bring the tech to them, you make it easy for them, you provide a group testing rate that is far more commercially viable than if they would do it individually, and you get the benefit of scale there because there's high volumes in on that case. So that might be like the first way you could potentially approach that. Now, in terms of kind of figuring out, well, how many of those would you need to do?
Well, like on that, we can probably plug the Vald ROI calculator as well. So if you go on the website on Vald, you can actually input the cost of your treatment or whatever, input the cost of your technology, and it will tell you need 2.1 visits to pay your bills. And it's usually a very small number like that. But anyways,
so and I think that probably does it better than I do. So for example, let's say you were to pitch 3 testing independent testing sessions for a soccer club. One when they return from their off season, one at the end of pre-season, and one as a midway point during their season. And you price that at $20 an athlete, and there's 100 athletes in this club. It's a $2,000 per testing battery. It's probably low price point. You probably can get that across the line. You get $6,000 on the front end. That's not necessarily where you make all your money, because off the back of those 100 athletes, 5 of those athletes choose to see you for any follow-up. Maybe you'd send the LTV of those by $400, $500. Now you've added another, $2,500. Your net kind of all in is about $8,500 on those 3 testings. You do that for 3 clubs. You do that for a club, for a retirement center, for a large medical practice. All of a sudden you can start to see how those numbers get into the tens of thousands of dollars quite easily. And so, but that requires some networking. That requires your team to be willing to go out and put some offers forward. So it needs to work with your business and with your business model. That's one way. We don't do a lot of that, but we have done that in the past. The way that we primarily use the tech to generate revenues is we liquidate our marketing spend. And I want to kind of dive into this because once you understand it, it's a bit of an aha moment. We spend about $500, $600 to acquire a customer. And what that means is when we add all our marketing budget in, so what we spend on advertising, whether that be organic advertising like leaf drops, we don't do that. But if you did do that, whether it be sponsoring clubs, whether that be paid advertising, we also add marketing budget, like my costs. I'm the sales and marketing guy, so add my wages into that. You add any other wages that you might have for those types of functions. You add in things like subscriptions that relate to marketing. So if you've got a content calendar subscription, you add all those things in and you essentially have a marketing budget per year. We then we take that budget per year, divide it by the amount of athletes that we acquire, and we get a cost of acquisition. Right now, that's around $500 to $600 on average. What you can do with that information once you figure that out is then design front-end offers that liquidate that cost. So let's say you run those numbers and in your business, you don't do any paid advertising. You have a much smaller marketing budget, and it ends up being for every customer that you acquire, it costs you $200. I'm just going to use that as an example. You can then design a front-end offer that makes sense, that works for your business model for around $200, and then liquidate the cost of acquiring that customer. Because even though it costs you $200 in budget, you collect $200 when they first walk through the door. You now have no marketing cost. Now, if you have no marketing costs, then you can acquire more customers. If the number changes from $200 to $300 as you trial a new strategy, maybe you go into paid ads and you're not as successful there, so it costs you more money per customer because you now allocate a budget to that, and it goes from $200 to $300. What do? You adjust the front end offer to $300.
Yes, okay.
And so you can see how this follows on. So it's a really dynamic way to essentially ensure that you never ever spend $1 on marketing. And if you don't have to spend $1 on marketing, you will win, because there's always a cost to acquiring customers. So the person who can acquire customers cheaper will end up winning. over the long term. So we realized that, at around 500, 600 bucks, that we're pretty stable there from a cost perspective, as long as we're selling our front end testing packages. And we can go into that if you want to, for around $500.
Yeah.
All in, we have a line on our P&L, which is testing revenue. We have our budget line on our expenses, also on our P&L. Those two things cancel each other out.
Yeah. Okay.
And once you realize that, now all of a sudden you can scale far more consistently, because you can predict in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months time how much you're willing to spend on marketing, because your front end costs can be dynamic. Even if they go up to $800, you just might have to repackage what your front end looks like. Maybe it's testing with the next 4 weeks of training included, or it's testing with a program and a follow-up testing, whatever it is. You're dynamic on both those variables.
I think that's the aha moment, because when you say that you have to, match that cost, a lot of the time people will think, okay, this month I have to go 300, next month I have to go 700.
Yeah.
So it's adjusting the offer.
It's a new offer.
Yeah.
It's a new offer. And so there are some mechanics that have to go into that. If you are going to, have 17 different offers, if your marketing budget's unstable and it's volatile because you're testing things out, there might be some extra effort in building new landing pages, but this is what businesses have.
Heathen problems at the start,
exactly
of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the volatility, like any asset, kind of slows down over time. Things become more predictable.
Yeah.
And now we know, between $500 and $600 is our CAC, our customer acquisition costs. As long as we're selling our products on that front end, we're covering our costs for marketing. I can go to my CEO and say, hey, I'm costing nothing. My whole department costs nothing to operate. Do what you want with that info.
For sure. That's awesome. Okay. I think that's an aha moment.
Yeah. So, and then maybe the third one, if you're, say, more in a hybrid business model where maybe you do some sessional component where you treat transactionally, someone comes in, they pay you for that treatment, that time, that 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. But then you've also got maybe some type of subscription model, or maybe either or, you've just got one of those. What we also find is that if done properly, you can massively extend the LTV of a customer. And let me expand on that. Let's say your patient visit average is 6, or it's 8, or it's 10. Let's say it's 6, which is kind of pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
If you simply added a testing so they come in for initial consult, there's some baseline testing at the start, that's a consult, and they do some exit testing at the end. In relative terms, you've moved from 6 to 8. You've increased your PVA by 33%.
Amazing.
Because you went from 6 and now you're 8.
Yeah.
So an extra 2 on the 6 is 33%. If you then go, okay, cool, great, you've graduated, you've met all our exit criteria, the testing numbers looks really good. Just to make sure that you don't regress, in 6 weeks' time, I'm booking you in for a follow-up.
9.
Testing, now 9.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you can go take, what was 6 and turn that into 9 and get a 50% uplift in your PVA.
Mm-hmm.
And what we realize in business is sometimes it's not necessarily about more increasing the amount of customers that you can acquire, but getting more out of what you've got. If you have 600 customers that come through your doors and they're each worth $600, you only need to get them from $600 to $800 to increase your net margin quite significantly, because there's no extra cost in acquiring those customers because you've already got them.
For sure.
So that's kind of one way that you could think of it. Then the other way you could think of it is if you're in a subscription model where people pay for an ongoing service. There's always essentially this decision when they see that money come out of their account each Monday or Sunday or whenever it is, am I getting the value to keep justifying this exchange of value? And this goes on quite subconsciously for a while before it becomes conscious. And it's kind of, they're trying to gauge, this transaction, this energy transaction, are things working out in my favor? The moment a customer feels like they're paying more than for the value that they're receiving, they're going to cancel. So how do you increase the perception of value? That's a key question. And if you know that people cancel when the money exceeds the value, what do you do? But what you can do is you can essentially milestone, using testing, you can milestone goals and progress. For example, if you know that your LTV on someone is 1 year, the average lifetime value is, or length of time is 1 year, what do you do at weeks 40, 44, and 48 to set goals for weeks 100, 112, 120? And when you realize that, okay, you can use the test and go, well, look at the progress you've made. It's awesome progress. There's two schools of thought. You can kind of just now start to plateau and go back to your old gym membership and, kind of just enjoy the benefits you've got, but not necessarily improve. Or do we set new goals and chase even harder for next year and double that LTV? Then all of a sudden, once again, your net margin improves, because in our experience, it's far easier to reduce churn than it is to increase signups. If you can find ways to leverage reduction in churn so people aren't leaving as quickly, aren't leaving your system as quickly, puts far less stress on the marketing system that you've got. So there's kind of maybe three key buckets. You've got the over-resourced with staff, send them out into the world, do some kind of prospecting and some outreach, generate revenues on the front end at a low cost, high volume, low cost model. You've got the liquidating model where you go, well, what's my marketing cost to acquire customers? And we need to go over that again, how to figure that out. We can, but it's essentially all your costs involved that relate to the acquisition of customers. It's wages, it's ads, it's paying for signage, paying for all of that type of stuff, paying for subscriptions. You take the total amount per year, divide that by the customers that you bring in per year. That gives you a CAC, customer acquisition cost. Once you know that, you can design an offer that liquidates that cost, that offsets that cost. And then the third one being, how do you use tech in your processes to extend the length of time that someone sees you for? Yeah. Regardless of whether you do it on PVA or membership.
Yeah, I love that, because you're talking as a business owner, which so many of our clients at Vald are, that that first and foremost, they have to run a business, but everything that you said there keeps the athlete front and center. So if you do want to reevaluate goals and you want to make sure that their outcomes are maintained the same, but then we chase a new goal and we get better as athletes, it's a really nice ethical way.
You have to keep your athlete front and center. Exactly. And so whether it's you're working with competitive athletes like us, or whether you're working with everyday athletes or the general population, or people with falls risks, or whatever it is, the whole point of business is to keep your client front and center. That you have to always keep that front and center. The best products keep their clients front and center. If you design a product first and then say, well, what are the customers? You're usually going to be in trouble. You go, what are my customers? Who are my customers? What are their problems or their needs? Now let me build a product that suits that.
Yeah. 100%. I think we're in a good place here to.
It's a pretty good example.
Emulate that. Yeah, 100%. Cool. So I think that was really, really helpful. The next thing is, like, you're in such a unique position. You've done so much already. Scaling business, growing business. Sometimes it just doesn't work out as well. And we've touched earlier today on the Melbourne example. So maybe we can dive into the Melbourne example. You can give us a bit of a rundown of the storyline there and the lessons learned.
Yeah. Well, look, scaling a business is not easy. If it was easy to scale a business, I think everyone would do it. Yeah. And especially in let's call it allied health businesses or personal services business, rather than say professional services business, which I'd say we are a personal service business. It's you can only read so many books, and all the books will give you the blueprints. They'll give you the models. They'll tell you how to approach the challenges, but you can only really learn some things through experience. And even the best advice you'll often ignore until you have to learn it the hard way. And realistically, we had to learn some things the hard way, which is through experience. So we had a really successful gym in Sydney. It still is very successful. But when you've run a successful facility for a couple of years, with in excess of 20% profit margins over multiple years, you start to feel like you're pretty bloody good at what you do.
Yeah.
And maybe I needed to be a bit more humble back then, in hindsight. But what we recognize is, well, if we're doing it in Sydney, and our systems are as strong as they are, we can do it anywhere. So we chose the highest density of athlete population we could find, and that was Melbourne in Australia. It's the AFL capital of the country, and I think it's the sporting capital in terms of per capita for participation. So Melbourne seemed like the obvious option there, and everything really was pretty awesome to start. There's a big CapEx requirement to get us going, but that's okay. We had the capital. We'd done very well the years prior. We had great systems. We had a great launch. But what we really probably neglected, or what we didn't probably place a full weighting on, is the value and the utility of having people with real skin in the game on the ground. And I say real skin in the game because my team in Melbourne were absolutely incredible. They worked their asses off. They went over and above within their capacity, but at the end, they didn't have an ownership in the business.
Yeah.
And over time, you only have to lose one or two staff members to pro sports opportunities or to other opportunities to start to realize that you built a business on actually pretty unstable foundations, relying on simply your system, without really the personnel that could, when it was really tough, they didn't have an exit plan. And this is the difference. When you own a business, there's far fewer exit strategies. You either you close it down, you sell it, or you make it work.
But you're in there regardless. Yeah,
you're in there.
I think on the point of losing staff to, I wouldn't say better opportunities, but professional on a higher level, that's not a bad thing either. You can't begrudge someone for wanting to taste that.
And we've built our brand on that.
Yeah.
We've built our brand on coaches leaving to go to pro sports. So we can't be upset when they do. Yeah. It's really a testament to how many other private facilities does a pro club look at and go, I think you're ready for pro sport. I don't think there's many. So, we're really grateful that happens.
Yeah.
But of course it's an attack vector, right? We're fragile in that sense. And so when we lost a couple of key players over the course of a few years and realized actually what we were really missing was skin in the game. And we were a little too late to try and rectify that. We did then advertise to try and find someone who did want to take an ownership in the business. But of course, do you get someone who values it at the right price? All selling is selling a business. It didn't work within the time frame that we had available to us. And then the lease came up for renewal. And this is where, you have to sometimes eat humble pie. The ego says, keep going. And the objective, impartial party brain says, don't, what's that saying? Spite the nose to, eat the face, whatever that saying is. And really that's what we're doing. We're running a profitable company in Sydney that was not, that on aggregate or on a consolidated balance sheet and P&L was not profitable because we were losing money on the Melbourne sites. We felt like we just had to make a commercial decision to close that.
Yeah.
What are the lessons? Probably the first one is if we were to do it again, and we probably will, we will certainly probably look to have directors at locations where the directors, the current director structure isn't willing to go. I wasn't willing to move to Melbourne. It's too cold. My family likes the beach too much. Lockie wasn't willing to move to Melbourne for probably similar reasons. We also had all our kind of friendship circles. And so we really should have found someone who was like, I love Melbourne. My whole family's in Melbourne.
Yes.
I want to do this. I want to be a part of a brand. I'm willing to fly the flag. And I think things would have been very different. But that's not how they played out. And so I'd always recommend for people to not necessarily get attracted by the shiny object of scaling, to do it really, really intelligently and with patience.
Yeah.
I think the market hadn't yet demanded we come to Melbourne. I think we chose to come to Melbourne. If we had maybe just stuck with what we were doing for another year, I think the difference that happens is that someone comes to us and say, hey, I've been watching you for 4 or 5 years. Here's $500,000 or $1 million in equity. I want a 50% stake in Melbourne location. I think we're probably a year away from that happening.
Yeah.
And maybe our trajectory is really different.
For sure. Well, I think kudos to you guys as well. That the word objective was used there a lot, and it's so difficult when you're attached to something, when it's your baby, it's it's your project, to actually have the self-control to evaluate it objectively and make that decision. So kudos to you guys.
And you just got to recognize the sunk cost. We had lost, if you aggregate the losses over the 3 years, we lost a substantial amount of money. The one way you can look at that is, well, I've lost so much money, I should try and turn this around.
Yeah.
I've lost so much already, I have to try and make this work. That's what you call a sunk cost. It assumes that you can dig yourself out of a hole, and you typically can't dig yourself out of a hole. And when we step back, we're an objective, we're like, what's actually going to change in our realities? I wasn't going to move. Lockie wasn't going to move. We couldn't find someone to have an ownership stake in the company. It made far more sense to cut our losses.
Yeah, 100%.
And businesses do that.
Yeah.
That's and it's It hurts the ego. I think if it didn't hurt the ego, that would be weird.
Yeah.
If I could be like totally unemotional about it, we certainly were. It certainly hurt. I remember, the week I was there closing it down, I may or may not have shed a tear in silence, going, "For this sucks." They're the kind of lessons, we would definitely will do it again. We'll just do it differently.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I appreciate the honesty as well on that. I think it's something that a lot of people listening will take lessons from, and there's very few people that have the courage to go in and go out like you guys have. So I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah. Well, there are really two options. You don't bail, and then you sink the whole ship.
Yeah,
and that was the worst. That would have been a worse outcome
for sure.
So you never want that outcome.
Cool. Right, well, moving on to slightly more positive notes, we're going to wrap it up here. I've got 3 kind of small questions. Don't think too hard on them.
Sure. They're rapid fires, are they?
Not exactly rapid fire. One of them is, what's one VALD tool that you think right now is underutilized in the industry? So all of our different systems, based on what you've seen.
Yeah, okay. I probably think the qualitative analysis is probably most underutilized. So from the human track side and the visual assessment, I think that's probably underutilized. I think potentially that's because it's the closest to a coach's eye.
Yes.
That it's probably got the least uptake because it's closest to what I feel like a good practitioner can already do. It can already pick up on the valgus. It can already pick up on those types of things. So potentially that might be why. But I reckon, I would definitely say the human track.
I like that insight because you've been exposed to the full suite of VALD tech and you can come from all angles. So that's good. The second one is, how do you train your staff to interpret and apply the data? Do you have your own internal onboarding setup system, or is it a case of VALD supports you, or what does that look like?
Yeah. Look, we're very fortunate that since 2018, absolutely everyone has fully believed in VALD. So there's never been anyone who's come into the organization and not wanted to fully adopt and fully integrate testing into their decision making and into their programming. It does help that the system almost engineers it to be that way. Every athlete comes in to test when they first join, then they test on a 10-week rolling cycle, so 2 5-week cycles, capture a full testing battery. That's kind of built into the training system. And so you really have no choice. It's what's the example? It's like, imagine if you're a FedEx driver or Australia Post driver, and you, how do I describe it? I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Yeah, if you're in Australia Post and you were told, "Oh, sorry, you can't use a motorbike, you can't walk, there's no mechanism for delivering posts," it wouldn't make any sense. You'd be like, "I deliver posts." In our business, to deliver the training program, you have to test.
Yeah.
And so it's probably made a fair bit easier that way.
For sure. That's amazing to hear. And then the final one, what's next for Athletes Authority without giving away any
There are some things I can't share.
Yeah.
Part of Melbourne consolidation was, we've got big ambition and you have to decide to redirect your energy and consolidate your resources. So we do have some big things on the horizon, which will hopefully reset the standard for performance training centers without giving too much away.
Mm-hmm.
Testing will be a very much a big part of that. The environment within the performance center will be a big part of that. We've found over the last 5 or 6 years that the easiest thing to do is open a performance gym these days. All you need is someone to give you a business loan.
Yeah.
And you can open a performance gym. So we recognize that we need to reestablish competitive advantage in some other ways. And so we're looking to do that in some cool ways, which will come out in time. You'll probably no later than, say, November would you be seeing that being rolled out. But really, if I look really long term at the industry, I feel like there's this convergence of two identities. The athlete, the competitive athlete, is converging with the everyday athlete. They're both demanding better data. They're both demanding better insights. They're both demanding more professionalism with the coaching. They're both demanding a more high performance training environment in which they, challenge themselves and expand their potential. So there is this convergence happening, which I think is really interesting if you work with competitive athletes, because the distinctions between the two, whilst one still goes out on a Saturday and plays sport and the other doesn't, that's almost the only distinction that is left. Yeah. They both want the done. They both want training. They both want the professionalism. They both want the accountability. All of those things start to remain true. You also then get these gym sports like High Rocks pop up, and then they want these things too. So there's this convergence of markets. And I think that's going to be interesting for how we will navigate that. Certainly in the athlete space, we spend a lot of time talking about the defensibility of just training athletes long term as the market matures, as S&C matures, as sports clubs get better at providing S&C options. Can we defend just purely training a high performance athlete? I think the evidence typically indicates that people have created more optionality. Exos is a great example. Built their name on Athletes Performance, or their name was Athletes Performance, then rebranded to Exos and then to the corporate performance market. So I think there is a bit of a precedent that optionality is going to be important as the market matures. With who we serve. But yeah, I would love to share more. We're recording this about 1 month too early.
Okay.
For me to share some.
That's all good.
Goss.
I'll have a calendar invite or a calendar reminder set up, and I'm sure the people listening will as well. So I'm keenly looking forward to that. Final one, Karl. If people want to reach out to you, connect, where do they do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty hard to find.
Oh yeah,
I do that kind of intentionally.
For me, it's once a year. Every year when I come to Brisbane, there's a good chance we'll connect. And apart from that, it's tricky.
We're all in. We're all in on the week that I'm here.
Yeah.
But I like to try and keep myself pretty separated from media. Like you're not going to really find me doing anything on Instagram. I haven't updated a LinkedIn profile in 5 or 6 years. I do that by design. But if, of course, for anyone listening, if you do have a question or want some follow up or want to maybe get some advice in your context, Karl with a K .Goodman at athletesauthority.com.au. I will answer the email. Some of it old school in that way. Otherwise, I like to protect my family time and keep business and personal life pretty separated.
Perfect, mate. Well, thank you for coming on VALDCAST. This has been a great chat, and it's always fun with you. And again, to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and share VALDCAST, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. And we'll be back very soon.
Cheers.